okay. And I ran into.
I'll turn my face off so it's not so distracting. I know the beauty of it.
It is beautiful, Neil. Peniel Neil.
Yes, exactly.
This is the moniker.
Peniel Neil.
So these are just artifacts. Speaking of tinfoil hats, these are artifacts that have been found in the Americas, and they've since the since the colonists came through. This is kind of a little documentary I ran across last night, as a matter of fact, just talking about very interesting artifacts that were found that certainly exhibit a lot of the qualities of Sumerian and Egyptian artifacts. So
wherever they found was in some kind of mound or pyramid.
Michigan, all over. They go over all different places, like even with the Incas, some of the design of the Incas, etc. So
basically, worldwide culture evidence is what we're looking at, Ace.
Worldwide, right? Exactly.
Welcome to the June 12th edition of the Electric View. I'm Neil Thompson. Today we have David, Robert, Cameron, Richard, and Jim. We are going to be discussing challenges to conventional archaeology, ancient worldwide civilization evidence, and what we can surmise since the development of plasma physics. Please take a moment to like and subscribe.
Oh, that's a great design there for a hot climate with the extra insulating roof.
Yeah.
So to be like a wine cellar down the inside. Oh, it's 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4 levels. 4 levels of roof. Jeez.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, they know how to save themselves from Robert Schoch's or Michael Steinbacher's River of Fire.
Yeah, that would be like an artificial cave with easy entry and exit.
Yep. Good place to run to.
Yeah.
It's got that Grimm's fairy tale look to it. Kind of.
Mm-hmm.
But after watching that podcast with Joe Rogan, that was with Robert Schoch there. That was pretty revealing. He went all EU there.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Peratt was all over that.
Well, speaking of memes, I mean that getting mentions in any kind of mention and anything that has a large audience is probably the kind of thing that's going to get it out there.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
I like that he I mean, of course, Robert comes from his own point of view, and he has some evidence to back him up. His evidence would probably make me want to redate some other things I've seen, but still.
Yeah. Jim, you have a little deeper experience with Robert Schoch, don't you?
Oh yeah, I met him at the CPAC things, and we had a lot of discussions on his early EU ideas. Even, I mean, he didn't know much about that kind of stuff before,
right?
So it was.
What was he like?
He's the most down to earth person. He should have an ego with what, as popular as he got, but he'll sit and chat with anyone who has anything halfway intelligent to say.
Uh-huh.
I ran across some of the EU 2013 videos. The 2 parts of Rupert Sheldrake and the 2 parts of Dean Radden. I think that must have been an exciting year for the conference. I really liked the Rupert Sheldrake talk he gave.
Mm-hmm.
Did everybody see that?
The EU Science Set Free?
Yeah.
2013, I think it was.
Yeah, Science Set Free. Well,
the science delusion amazing. He was doing, that whole talk.
Science Set Free, I guess, was the book he was talking about.
Yes, he did a 2-parter, actually, if I'm not mistaken.
He did, and it's such a speaker, and he knows so much, It was just the best video I've ever seen about, history of science, and and then getting into some of his own stuff,
Our mistakes and assumptions. That is what I liked most. And when he pointed out our beliefs, all those, put that together combined with the word science, and I think that needs to be restated like every year, because it's so easy to get off track and to turn this whole thing into a fiasco where, you're no longer doing science. You don't even realize you've left reality behind, and now you're off into la la land.
Mm-hmm. Like giving the 10 major assumptions of modern science all wrong.
Right. And here's the foundations. And then he's such a compelling speaker. This is from a style points to me, he gets like A+.
Yeah.
It's like, but he's so, what's the right word for it? Just really coherent and just comfortably appealing.
Yeah, and I think it was like, if I got it right from watching it, there was no notes and no video. It was just him talking.
It is. It's so
effective.
Yep. Yeah.
Apparently, he'll be at the Bath conference.
Oh, really? Fantastic!
I think he was confirmed, but I just saw rumors. So.
Okay.
That'd be cool.
I spoke with Ito, and he's it's been apparently it's been a very exciting time for him being here, and he's preparing for that.
You said he's in Colorado, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He's at Fort Collins.
So are you still not going to Bath, David?
No, I don't think so. What's the date on it?
What if we took up a collection? I mean, it'd be nice.
I'm just kind of getting back on my feet. I'm trying to make sure that this, after pushing for a year and a half, it's like this one gig I suddenly land on. I want to make sure that I deliver on it. So.
Oh yeah.
I'm pretty much hermitized here. So I like it, but it's.
Well, we'll miss you.
Yeah, this is the thing that was discussed though. It's with James Sorensen. He's also going to be giving a presentation, and there's discussion of having Neil be part of that. So.
Oh, cool.
So I don't know how I'm supposed to get there, but I'll see what happens.
Well, they're talking about doing it remote. So.
That's fine. I'll gladly help out. Anything I can do.
Yeah.
Even I'll just record something that he can put some video if he wants to have like a 5-minute thing. I'll just put something up and explain something that he wants me to explain, whatever he was thinking about.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that's like it's such a natural. It's kind of like falling off a log. Is since we do these, it's basically the same thing, but you could do it in front of an audience.
Oh yeah, I have no problem. So, this is great.
So if it was live, if you did it live, you could do it live. Yeah, you could do it live really easily. So. And I mean, it would be more compelling.
Well, sure. I wouldn't mind.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see how that plays out.
It would be funny, though, wouldn't it? Be like, yeah, I've decided to do my thing right here while my friends are doing a Skype call. Let me just call them up. Click. Ring.
Yeah. No,
right on screen, right up there, and it goes, hey, Dave. Hey, Heather. Hey, buddy. Hey, Richard. What's going on?
If I extrapolate it, just because I'm, like being a goofy comedian kind of thing, it's like we could do the whole group in front of an audience.
God, that we'd have a lot of views then, I'm sure.
Right.
Well, we might want to be a little more organized.
Yeah.
We're the bad news bears as far as that goes.
Well, we do have we don't have as much organization as I would like probably, but at the same time it wasn't required before, but now it's starting to be required. So
right. But there's a freewheeling aspect that I personally kind of like with it. But.
Yeah, it's building up at its own pace.
Yeah. I mean, for what we're doing here, it's appropriate. But if you've got an hour slot in a conference, then you sort of want to have
Oh, well, that would have to be controlled.
Yeah. This is where we're doing presentations. If we were doing presentations for each other, it's natural to be able to do this. Now that we got kind of comfort levels, it's like that would be good practice. Present. You just have an idea that you present. Anyway, putting that on the table.
Well, that's an idea. Is that if any of us come up with something, it wouldn't have to be the whole time. Like you might have a 20-minute presentation, which then could lead to lots of discussion. Mm-hmm. We could be each thinking about something we might want to present.
Yeah, it'd be great. So, Jim, what are your thoughts, man?
Which part?
About giving presentations.
Yeah, how would that work? Well,
this is the art of doing it. This is the more you do it, the more you get comfortable with it. It's just like this is the theme that comes up for me is repeat, and repeat, and then it's easy. And I'm finding that with more and more. I think because of our frenzied lives, we don't really get a chance to really hone kind of skills, etc. So,
well, it's like you might, if there's some idea you wanted to present, you might gather some images and put them in a PowerPoint or something, and then grab the screen and sort of go through your images and telling your points, and then open it up for discussion.
Yeah.
Sort of like preparing a space news.
Right. I mean, there's an interesting cross. We're probably too far to the other side of it, but there's a thing that happens with those where they're so produced. They're kind of built to be bulletproof from like discussion a little bit. A lot of declarative stuff. Where for me, like the mind reacts more positively, where it's like, okay, we don't know what the real answer is, but what's the kind of tendency or probability that it's this or that or the other thing.
Well, but I mean, like the Rupert Sheldrake talk that we all liked. I mean, he was saying declarative things.
He does. Yeah.
Well, but he does back it up, of course.
Yeah. Well, yeah, of course, right.
I mean, he's basically, it's pretty aggressive actually when the ideas, but he does it in such a mellow term, matter of fact.
So the opposite of wall.
Yeah, no, it diffuses the energy because he's so matter of fact about it and kind of, just likable. Ultimately,
yeah. He does. It's like not coming from arrogance.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
It's coming from a calm knowledge, and he's only asking questions where we don't know what the answer is. Where there's certain things we just simply, as much as smart as we think we are, we just don't know, and we are subject to our own limitations. Human wise.
Like I just listened to a book called "What Is Real" about sort of the fundamentals of quantum physics,
Mm-hmm.
And it's very interesting in that there really isn't a coherent model of quantum physics.
No,
they've got
seems that
several
way.
interpretations, which the guy claims are all equivalent in terms of their consequences, but all different.
I like the charmed particle. That one's pretty. Have you ever seen the names of those things? All the crazy, and Feynman went wild with this. I don't know if you looked at the Feynman diagrams and what he was talking about. Here are all these behaviors. Let's make them most exotic Rube Goldberg machine you can imagine.
Well, the scientists in quantum, the one thing they don't want to allow is that there's actually a role for consciousness, or that consciousness is anything real. But then in Dean Radin's presentations in 2013, his experiments were directly linking consciousness to the control of quantum phenomenon, which is quite interesting.
Right.
You're sitting there and say, okay, pretend you're inside the double slit, and will the interference pattern to go a certain way, and then it does, to an extent that would be 10 to the minus 100th, but that it was by chance, that kind of thing.
They were doing it's a similar experiment that they're doing at Princeton, where they were running, they have different types of random number generators.
Exactly.
17-bit polynomial counter is a good one. But they're really pretty. They land, if you do the coin flip, they land pretty solid 50-50, right?
Right.
But they're pretty exotic as well. But they've done experiments where, get someone in there and will it to go one way or the other, and they get really statistical results with it that are pretty, solid.
Yeah. So it definitely puts consciousness as one of the attributes of quantum phenomenon, which pretty unarguably,
Yeah. But it's highly threatening to the mainstream, for sure.
Yeah, just because they don't want it to be true.
Right, of course. Yeah, of course not. Yeah. So, I think that this is what we're touching on is kind of the crux of what's kind of bubbling up with the trend that I'm personally seeing. The Descartesian, split, and then ultimately what happened after that.
Mm-hmm.
I see undeniable parts, likely a lot of them being erroneous. Like, I'm not against the idea that there are problems with, but it's clear that a revision of history or archaeology probably needs to be entailed. The whole dismissal of a bunch of cultures across North America alone should be re-examined, especially the connection between those and Ireland, for example. I mean, they have the same, barrows and dolmens and that kind of thing. I mean, why? This makes you question so many things.
Well, one of the things about them is these mountains being created, by electrical phenomenon kind of thing.
Right.
So then things can be buried in that, which by standard geological theory had to be millions of years ago, but it might have only been, 10,000 years ago.
Right.
So it doesn't necessarily make that artifact as old as they think it is.
Well, and that's generally what I meant when you start looking at things through the EU perspective, the electric universe perspective. You mean now when I see the connection between, let's say, the pyramids of Ohio and the mound builder civilization there, and then all of that all the way out to New England, and how that seems to be a continuation of the culture from Ireland. Was it King Solomon's mines? Who knows? That was another idea that someone put forth one time, because it took a year to get there, and they stayed a year, and it took a year to get back, apparently. And what would take a year to get to from Samaria or Babylon or wherever they were, Middle East?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that so if we accept that there was 100,000 years between the last two ice ages, then during that time there was a global culture, a global civilization, with the oceans, 200 meters lower, so that it was all happening out on what we now call our continental shelf. And then we had the Thunderbolts of the gods coming down and killing 99% of everybody and destroying everything except things made of solid stone. So it's not surprising that you find the same kind of things all over the world. It's kind of what you would expect.
I really like that Robert Schoch did that thing where he said, he's like Joe Rogan was asking questions. So you mean like lightning? He goes, oh, no, it'd be worse than that. He goes, like this? No, worse than that. No, times a million. Like he was like, he kept on trying to go, no, further than that. Like further. This is catastrophe. This is the removal of, this is the removal of life, people dying of radiation poisoning and everything else. It's,
right.
And I was like, damn, no wonder and like I said, they did build underground cities, bunkers. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
China has them. We have them all over here. I envision a bunch of people probably built them lower and they did not survive. It wouldn't surprise me if later on we find caves like in the middle of Indonesia there, where there's just islands now, somewhere on the side, off the coast, down a little bit, into the water, and they see a bunker entrance or cave entrance. They go in, it's just filled with dead people.
Yeah, and if they knew something about the cyclic nature of electric phenomenon, they might have known for quite a bit in advance that there was going to be a cataclysm coming. And things like the pyramids would say, we got to build something that's going to survive this, and you've got to build signs in it so people could interpret them later.
Well, that's the thing. This is where this is what Robert was saying when he was alluding to his go back in time. Like they restored the pyramids, they restored the Sphinx, but the cultures actually built them were even older than that, and they were heralding from this time. And this brings into this whole worldwide idea of civilization, and it's compelling. Number one, because we see giant, I mean seriously giant evidence of it. Like who else is building with giant stones, and why did you build with giant stones here, here, and here in a similar way? Why are you using the same techniques? It's it belies. I mean, we will find 100 different things to do the same action. Although they will be within the limitations of our body and the conditions and so forth. But you get people to build a motorized vehicle or a personal conveyance. None of them look the same at the beginning. We only homogenize them over time with laws and other things like that. But the original cars all looked very weird. Some were trikes, with one wheel in the front. Some pulled, some pushed. They were all different variants of the 1870s to 1905 or so. The variants of motorized vehicles with no standards was crazy. So to say that, oh no, they just came across and that's why they all use these metal lintels, those little poured pieces of metal that link two blocks together that they see in Pumapunku and they see in Egypt and they see all over the world. They're all they're all the same. And it's like, no, you don't come up with that unless you have a problem to solve. Why are you doing that? What are the constraints that are causing this to be required? We don't need it today. What would you need it for? That type of thing. I mean, it's obvious that they were building for structural stability. They were in some sort of shaking earth. You don't build heterogeneous blocks that are interconnected that will not fall apart even without mortar unless you know how to build. And it's...
Yeah, so what technology... And, we still don't know what technologies they had.
Well, they certainly weren't scratching on animal skins, picking their butts. That's what I'm saying. They were smart people. They had an engineering core. They were doing their thing. I'm not sure who they were, but they were smart and they talked to each other, it looked like. Yeah. Sorry for interrupting you there with just some passion. No. I'm passionate by it.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. No, I mean the thing that comes up is how similar some of the geometry used and those type of things between as far as building and then what seems to have been happening and so anyway. It's very interesting. One of the things, aside from that direction, seeing a lot of activity with the solar minimum, and there's quite a bit of buzz going on with that.
I would love to watch like the Earth from the outside, so I could see the ionosphere and see the electrical stress, like as if the Earth was a Torella, and you were able to just look at it and see the pulses as the way that the outer sheath moves as lightning goes across the surface, as volcanoes erupt, and see how that affects all the other things in the I guess you would say either the circuit or the harmony, whatever, because this is because charges moving will create areas of more charge, less charge, that type of thing. So,
well, what you need is to have a satellite that sort of can look at different radio tells looking at all kinds of different frequencies, so you could actually see what you're wanting to see, because it's broadcasting in some frequency, somewhere on the electromagnetic spectrum.
Yeah.
And so you'd find a spectrum that shows you the Van Allen belt happening,
Well, yeah, I've listened to. Luckily, people like Michael Clarage have just been really good eye openers for explaining what the interplanetary medium and its potentials are from the sun to the Earth and so on. And with that, you can sort of extrapolate, but it also doesn't move evenly. There's the ballerina skirt moving along as it spins. There's, increasing velocities of the solar wind. Depends on which, is it coming out of a coronal hole, or is it a regular solar flow? All these different arguments I'm trying to envision. And of course, I really like the fact that when we talk about kicking up the voltage, when Michael Clarage was talking about taking a plasma blob and it would hit the Earth, and how it would turn this low moving high current into a high voltage situation by transforming it up to, and then basically putting it along the rings, creating ring currents. And these ring currents would hold this voltage potential, which is why we get more rings at certain times to store more energy. I thought that was just brilliant, because it shows you these things have feedback circuits to them. They have.
Where's that? Where can we find that of Clarage?
I think it was 20 EU. I think it was 2015. I think 2014. The Earth Select. 2015.
I don't remember. I know. I think at that point he was mainly talking about Safire. But do we have? If we could find that video, it might be interesting. If somebody finds that.
Yeah,
sure. Michael Clarage, EU 20. Just type in 2014 EU 2014 Michael Clarage, and I'll tell you the picture of it, because I as soon as I see it. So not that one.
Not that one. 2014.
Yeah. Or 13 even. I wish I was in control, by the way. This is not the one either, by the way.
Don't we all?
Yeah.
You learn the most when you're not in control.
Yeah. Anyway, this is not the exact one, but this is something like that, because he shows.
Oh, there we go.
How the voltage is kicked up and stuff, but he does one just after this, where it's form follows function, so it's a year after this one, whatever this is. So I think it's probably 2014.
Well, give us this link, would you, Dave? On your
sure.
Yeah, and the other one too, if we find it.
We will. I'm positive.
Yeah.
There's something that came up in the Thunderbolts forum that was, I think, is good for envisioning the
That's it.
Sheet, how it changes.
Third one down.
In different parts of the cycle.
No, look, Jim, say more.
Yes, please. I just was trying to get this up and running, but I didn't mean to interrupt.
What the mainstream noticed is that obviously in one part of the solar cycle, there's that Parker spiral of current, and at another point in the cycle, you get oppositely directed cylinders of charge coming out from the sun, 180 degrees apart, opposite sides. Well, it turns out if you want to get a picture of it, all you have to do is look at galaxy shapes. They do the same thing. There's spiral galaxies that are a Parker spiral from when they start at the nucleus of the galaxy. And then there's barred spiral galaxies, which have streams of material coming out from both sides. In other words, what came up there is a realization that it's the same thing on two different scales, but on the galactic scale, you can actually see that the argument is that when you see these different galaxy shapes, you're not really seeing different types of galaxies. You're seeing different parts of the cycle of a galaxy. In other words, galaxies go through that same thing where they go from a Parker spiral to the barred jets of charge. But that's what they're mapping. The mainstream is mapping that in the solar system. They just don't have a picture of it. Whereas on the galactic scale, if you look at a chart of galaxy types, I forget what the standard is for that, but there's a map of galaxy types, and you can see the same patterns that they're talking about. And once you make that realization that the same thing is going on,
you're right.
That it's just a different scale. But the advantage is on the galaxy scale, obviously these cycles have to take huge amounts of time, so you're not going to see the dynamic. It's not an 11-year cycle for galaxies, so they appear static. But like if you look at SB, that would be S little b. That would be like the Parker spiral that they measure at one point in the solar cycle. And if you look at the bottom one right below it, S capital B little b, that's what they're seeing. That is those oppositely directed jets of charge. So what I'm saying is that those are not different galaxy types at all. They're just different phases in what must be like a huge, maybe millions of year cycle, just like the solar cycle.
Right.
It actually.
I think another complementary thing to say is that I think what we're seeing is the cross section of these currents coming in at the top and the bottom.
Right. Exactly. Exactly like we would in the solar system. You're kind of looking at the equatorial current sheet is what we're looking at here if we were talking about the sun. and
it's like the collision. It's the collision of, you got a current from the top, current from the bottom that are really rotating in opposite directions, and this is the collision. The galaxy is the collision.
Not
where
quite.
They collide.
Not that you're wrong, because there is current going in both directions, obviously, but this is the electrically speaking. This is a magnetic twist, a very deep, tangled magnetic twist that has become a load on the circuit, an inductive and electrical or power load, and this is why things are glowing and so forth. But the current is more or less traveling in one direction. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's always the case, with the ones that are feeding our planet. That's why your theory makes sense to me, because if one of the rings, the current that's probably feeding us is probably, we're not getting a stable connection with it. So it has control boundaries, which it has to react to. which are going to create polarity changes in it's going to lower and raise the voltage across the sun, I guess across the solar system. And that's going to change the magnetic flux, and therefore, you're going to have potential to flip poles and so forth. But this is because there's so many layers of this going down, but the galaxy is so big and the currents are so large that the only difference I'm seeing between them in this is like maybe, for example, there's a little bit more current in the SBA, SBB, SBC line than there is in the SA, SB, SC line. So that's just minor changes, but the evolution continues.
I'm seeing an angular thing. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but it's like, is that where you're kind of pointing, Jim? Just as far as like where the reason the geometries are different is what's your hypothesis on that?
I'm not sure. What I originally speculated, I'm not saying this is true, is if you look at like how Don Scott models that, current filament, is there's that region in the middle where there's no magnetic field. Now, if that's constant, if that's always the same, that's one thing. But if that changes with the current, then you can see how, like maybe S in that S little b on the top there, that one, there's like almost no radius before you get that winding. In the bottom one, there's that minimum radius where you can explain that by having no magnetic field there, and only the radial electric field would then cause charge to flow outward. And then what happens at some radius, you get a winding. And that, in other words, you could be looking at a cross section of a Birkeland current, where in the case on the bottom, that minimum radius where there's no magnetic field could be the section where the bar is, basically. That would fit. I'm not saying that that's what's happening. That's how
right.
Well,
no. So really,
okay.
Yeah, it's really
well, let me throw out a hypothesis that there's like basically two kinds of phenomena like this. One of them is, like with the Earth, you have a strong magnetic field that brings a current in from both the north and the south, right? And they're both coming toward the Earth, but they're rotating in opposite directions. Obviously, they're both clockwise. Then that makes them opposite from each other. And then you have the kind of discharge of a comet, where basically the current is flowing through, and there's a tail, and there's no top and bottom. There's just the comet is being subjected to a current that's basically past it in one direction, and there's no top and bottom. And be that some galaxies are just one current going through, in other galaxies there's two currents coming in from the top and the bottom. I mean, could there be that dichotomy? That's a question, not a declarative statement.
Interesting that you say that, because also in the Thunderbolts forum, someone came up with that hypothesis on the solar system scale to explain with the sun, with the current sheet of the sun, that's what they thought was happening, is that at one point in the cycle, most of the current is through the sun, like right from maybe north ecliptic to south ecliptic pole. And at the other part of the cycle, it's that current flowing in or out, both like more symmetrical, in other words.
Well, there's definitely go ahead. Sorry, finish.
I was just going to say, there's a huge thread on that, and it's kind of hard to follow if you're going from it's been there for a while. It's on trying to put those two, the two circuits together, because there were two competing ideas for right from the beginning, the Elvane's circuit and the Jurgen's circuit, and there's a thread trying to put those two together and saying, hey, it's not all one or the other, maybe it's both. And then there was the idea somebody put forward, maybe it's more one at one time than the other time. But all these ideas were talked about in that thread. it's kind of hard to follow because it's been there for a while and a lot of people have contributed, but it is worth checking that out. Well, maybe I can try to sum up some of what's been going on there in the future and save you time from reading all that.
Okay, now you just named a good presentation to put together for us.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, because these are debates. Like I would, just by looking at the former pictures, for example, of the galaxies, I could see that maybe there was the center column, or right through is basically creating a Seaford or an active region in the middle, and it is separated by two, for example, two double layers that are separating from the next current over. And this is where I'm seeing perhaps twists and loads and other things like that, as you have indicated. There's some images, of course, you could find of the idea of these currents feeding through the galaxy, and each galaxy is a little bit of a load at a different point. I'm sure we could find it if we really tried, but let's not worry about that.
Well, let's think about the Peratt simulation that he did.
Well, that's what I was about to bring up.
It's like he's showing like when you see the coiled, two different Birkeland currents coiled around each other.
Yes.
He's basically showing two of them, and then as they intersect with each other and rotate, go around each other, you get the creation of a certain kind of spiral galaxy.
You can just type that in, actually, if you're looking for it. It's called Peratt Galaxy Slides. You can just type that into images. You'll find it. There's a GIF of it.
So that'd be one kind of galaxy.
Well, yeah, because there was certain electrical conditions that he set when he made it. You know, like, that's what I mean. I think that maybe there's a difference, and that it's good to have a debate on when this... is this difference cyclical, or does it? Because technically, when we think of the currents feeding the galaxy, we got to understand that they would be flowing just like that current there. It's up in the left hand corner. That one, just the two dots.
This one,
either one actually, but that's the GIF, I think.
Oh, okay, right.
So that's just his idea of two currents, of these force-free aligned currents moving in, and he set the distance approximately, he set them at 10,000 light years apart, and he let it run for 10 billion years or something. And, the form follows function, it's...
There it is. There it is in the middle, yeah.
Yeah. The attraction of the two, if we're considering them currents.
They will.
I've seen this done with the gravity model. They've done a lot of particle systems on this, but it's interesting looking at it from the EU perspective.
Well, I see this as Ampere's law. Two of these blobs are basically reacting. Now they suddenly have force between them, and the right-hand rule begins to kick in, and they start spiraling or twisting around each other. The closer you get to the middle, the more this is compounded. This is why you start getting plasmoids and active regions right in the middle. That whole middle part, however, could become its own, again, plasma source, which then separates these two arms, depending on current or voltage or something like that, some variable. And it looks like the tails are continuing off because these charges will elongate away from each other. And then they'll start...
They're going to naturally spin. I mean, if there's an attraction, they're going to naturally spin around each other.
Exactly.
That's just
the right-hand rule. Yeah. There's nothing else you need. It's very succinct.
Yeah.
It's like, ta-da, there you go. You don't really need anything else. I mean, that alone would prove your point, but obviously there's further you can go. And the idea that this, like the current that feeds this, okay, this is actually, it seems like two currents, obviously, and they're twisting around each other, okay, and that they're huge. They must be I mean, they're bigger than the magnetic field of that galaxy, and the galaxy alone is 100,000 light years across. So you're looking at a structure that around each galaxy, let's just say at least 500,000 light years in every direction, a giant donut.
Right.
And now
this is where you see how scales time as well. You know, I mean, because it's same. You can get the same effect, just like Garrett Hill does, in the lab. Just the frequency goes up because the scale goes up.
Oh yes, and also the same thing with the solar system. If the solar system has a magnetic field, which it does, then there's going to be certain. I mean, the electricity can't immediately get in. This is where I was having this is where me and Jim would debate. Basically, is right here is do they come in nicely and just form rings where each planet is all the way out to Pluto and then continue on its merry way? But no, there's actually a magnetic field in there. Each one of these magnetic balls inside of this field would be attracting their own currents, so to speak, from the intersolar medium or interplanetary medium, but it's the one to the north and the south of us because that's where their magnetic fields are. And this donut would be trying to feed into this, the currents would concentrate and head towards the sun. And this is why this is basically all of this area is doing work on particular, focused down on certain areas, which is why, when I said electrical load, when I said that there's a load, because there's something powering it, that we know that it has to travel overall in a circuit, because it has to go from where the voltage continues, making it want to go, basically. So there has to be, but this magnetic donut around the galaxy and around the solar system, of course, will isolate it as well. The currents will hit hit the heliopause, so to speak, and they will work it. The idea that the currents might not actually be here at all; they might be on either side of the sun, and we're just the plasmoid in the middle is another description. So there's different ways of looking at this because we really don't know the structure yet. We're just beginning to figure that out with new eyes. So it's that's 3 different versions, and all of them could be correct.
How can they all be correct?
Well, because they could be correct at different times. I meant.
I hear you.
But
or different, or fundamentally different configurations.
Yeah.
Just like the comet is a different configuration than what surrounds the Earth.
There's a part of me that's just trying to close my eyes and imagine the sun with a vortex coming out the top and bottom and wind, so to speak, but accelerating wind coming out the ecliptic. And then that's causing the ripples, and trying to imagine that affecting each planet as you go by, and the tails coming off of them, and then seeing how would their magnetic fields, especially Jupiter's, would try to connect with this extragalactic plasma, through the heliopause. Is that up there? Have we sent a probe to fly over there and look? All of this stuff is all we have is the laws of electromagnetism and imagination, really, because notoriously, as Hannes Alfvén said himself, we say we know what's going to happen, but as soon as you get plasma into a laboratory, it does exactly what you don't expect it to do. I mean, you can make certain predictions, rates of discharge, how much area might be covered in general of that arc there. Like you can say the arc is going to be about 3 feet long, and it will travel from here to here on average, but it will mostly be concentrated at this point. Okay, you can look at that and make that description, but then but you're asking to say something like, okay, map this whole thing in real time, do the whole thing, just tell me exactly where that current will hit and where and what it will look like. You can't do it. That's why I'm at the.
You can simulate it though.
Sure.
And that's the thing. You can see. You can. This is the beauty of like the ability to kind of write algorithms, because you can get something that behaves very similarly, and then you get an insight into the what the actual,
true
internal action is.
But this also, of course, yields to the other question is whether or not, like, if it acts like and sounds like, is it really? And that's the issue.
But I understand that point of view, but the act of saying, okay, what would make this happen causes a deeper inquiry into the problem. If you want to make it look like that, say, like if I was to take on that problem, it would be super challenging to begin with, right? But I immediately see frequency components in it, it's spatial frequencies. The thing that, it's often, okay, well, that's just a simulation. It's like the act of doing the simulation gives you insight into it.
I'm with that.
And right. I mean, to be able to predict that exactly really isn't, to me, isn't the mark to shoot for. It's like, what's the underlying principle happening?
Well, and to be fair, you have there's merit to that line of thinking, especially since it's generally cheaper and safer. But one of the issues that came up is with Hans Elvey and Kristen Berkman and others is that when you actually do it, though, and do it in the laboratory, you begin to really see what's going on. And the trouble is, of course, is that it's a big safety risk to start playing with this stuff. So, it's not, impossible, actually.
I'm absolutely fascinated about the possibility of Bill. I understand what they're doing at Safire, exactly.
Beautiful stuff.
And it's great, but it's like, I want one too. like a child.
Now,
it's like I want to play around with one too, but it's like does that probably sounds pretty selfish, I guess, but it's like, wouldn't that be just to see like what happens, when you set up different conditions.
Well, that would be ideal.
Instead of really trying to prove something, it's like, okay, what happens if you do this, and what happens if you do this, and what happens around here.
Well, this would mean that you would have to build a VR environment that could intimately.
I'm talking about really doing a real thing.
What you mean, really building a physical plasma chamber?
Yeah.
Well, this has been a discussion that I also had. One of the things that is the biggest problem is the control of pressure, because to really do, like, for example, shooting electricity from one point to another will always be in an arc form, unless because of the nature of the fact that so much air is such a dielectric, for example, it stops electricity. What you need to do is you need to lower the pressure of the gas inside, and therefore you can start looking at it for different ways. And this is what Kristen Berkman was doing, obviously, right. As you can see here. There's your tails, by the way, around the Earth, right there that Jim was talking about. He said there's two beams coming off on the pole on either side along the ecliptic. There's some of that happening right there on the. Here I am pointing as if you guys can see my finger. You can. Yeah. I guess of the 8 images in the corner, it would be the second from the bottom left.
Oh,
so
sorry.
8 images in the lower right. So yeah, right there. Okay, this one over. That one. That's what I was talking about. See how it has a something going from both sides along the elliptic?
Right.
That's what Jim was saying with regards to the galaxy, if I'm not mistaken. He was pointing at these barred galaxies and so forth. And I just saw that and said, well, I guess it does happen. There you go. So.
Right. I mean, this is where you're seeing so much, obviously, with. And I think he would be a great person. Once again, maybe we should take a step up and give him a ring, but get Garrett Hill on and talk to him about what he's discovered.
I'll have to do that.
I have a feeling that at the Bath conference we're going to see some really good stuff from Safire, because they've really been getting on the verge of some amazing things happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Are they all going to be? Are they all going to be there?
Well, I think
Clarage
I think I saw that there is going to be a Safire presentation.
Good.
And in Phoenix last time, I heard him talking to some people over breakfast, and he said, "We're going for fusion."
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
There, that image right there I like of the tufts and the one with the layers. Both of those. Very, very compelling. Each one of those is a step where you would go, like, the voltage potential is in an area, and it comes in. If you look at the voltage curve, each one of those would be like a steep L, if you know what I mean. Like, it would curve very sharply, and you would have most of the charge along one boundary. So this is why it's making these layers, just like the atmosphere makes layers, probably for the exact same reason. But you see these along the sun as well. So this right here is when I think that they drew that giant Nazca spider, and the idea that there's a spider in the sky, comes from seeing the magnetic field of one of our gas giants go into that mode for like a little bit. And it would just, like, could you imagine seeing that, like, just with the long legs leading off into space?
So how do they explain the steps?
It's just the highest charge, of course, positive charge would probably be in the middle. I'm not even sure, but I'm just going to go with that for now. And then each layer up from that would have, instead of being even all the way out to the voltage, the other voltage, whatever the other voltage is, the external parts of the chamber, instead of being step by step by step, or instead of being even, like, all the way, it's going in increments. And this is what it tends to do all the way from us to the sun, for example. You can see that there are packets of like 30 volts each that are traveling along, and this is what the whole solar wind is made up of, like 30 volt packets, like just little steps. And this is this tendency, we also see this tendency there of like getting all of these layers, of course, is leading up. This phenomenon could technically happen in fact, it does happen inside of the Crookes tube that we talk about and we showed pictures of. You can see what's called a standing column, or they basically show you the anode glow part, and then they show you the Faraday space all along this tube, right? Because it's an uneven electric discharge. The plasma in the tube is uneven, and then it has a bunch of balls, like it just said. Here's a bunch of the cathode stack or something, or whatever they're calling it. I don't know whatever they called it there. And that's basically the same thing as that, except in circular form or radial form. It's just the exact same phenomena, except it's a sphere. And it's and you have obviously it's hard to see perfectly, but because you'd have to find where the Faraday space is and all that wonderful stuff. Notice the geometry in that one, how it's not completely circular around it.
It's very interesting. There's there was some stuff that Kellerman was working on that's very similar to, just the banding, this type of banding that happens.
It's very compelling once you see it, because this would have been, if anyone saw something like this in the sky, something that went into that mode, it would have been drawn, I'm sure. Very pretty.
Mm.
These plasma balls, these spheres that expand outwards, are probably similar to the way that nuclear explosions work, or the idea. But I can see how much energy you can store in each of those layers, because each one's a capacitor, right? And you could store more and more if you can get it in there to hold it. And as long as it continues to hold, it can store many, many, many times the size of the electrode would indicate, because the surface would be the surface in the formula, but this is no longer the same case. Now you have a formula with a surface and another surface and another surface, and it's like nesting dolls of capacitance.
Mm-hmm. Let's find this because it says similar.
Well, I think that's what they're getting with Safire. I mean, like they said that the phenomena that are happening inside the chamber between the double layers and all is so much more powerful than the amount of energy they're putting into it.
That would seem to indicate that there's something adding power. That's for sure.
Well, or storing up. Like you said,
it could be that,
a certain amount of current and voltage coming in, and then it gets stored up in these double layers and starts to become a much more intense thing than you thought you would get.
Especially when it collapses.
Right.
That's what I think they talked about that once. I heard only rumors, and I can't verify anything, but it was something along the lines of the pulse that came out of it. The amount of energy was enough that they could their flash drives in their pockets, the LEDs lit up. So while they were just staying there, the pulse that came out of the machine was enough to it totally wiped things around them and stuff like that. Apparently, so
yeah, that sounds right.
But but Michael Clarage was talking about that's the solar environment, and he shows some the basic descriptions of how the belts work, and all of his presentations are, or at least the ones I've seen, have been very much on the explaining the environment between the sun and the earth, and how the earth processes electrons, and how it can how electrons go through it, and that type of thing. And I thought it was very compelling because he's showing stuff that the stuff that touches on the outside, because what we're really interested in is the induced currents that are traveling through the planet. Well, I am, because I want to know what's really going on there. But a lot of the energy that's going by the Earth is just going along our magnetic skin, so to speak, and traveling along down to the end of our tail. It comes in to one side around the aurora, goes along, and then back out. But because of the fact that there is a capacitor separating it, there's going to be inductance across that, of course. All this kind of thing is very, like, what is really going on, trying to understand that circuit. And, of course, we're just beginning that journey, so we're bound to make a few mistakes.
Nah, it'll be perfect.
It'll be perfect first shot.
It'll be perfect.
Yeah. I got a great I got a great idea. Maybe time and space bend. Huh?
Hey,
huh?
Huh? Hey, that's good.
Yeah,
that's a good one. That's
there
a good
you
one.
go. You might be on to something.
Give me a Nobel Prize.
Hey, immediately.
Everyone believe this.
That'll really screw their heads up.
But believe it without proof. I'll just send a guy out in 1919 to look up at the sun, and he'll just say, yep. And then we'll go, yep. And then that was it.
Yep.
Yeah, that was it. We did it. Yep. I can't believe something so important was based on such
a charade.
Well, and that.
Well,
how was I not seeing through this the whole time?
Napoleon always said never attribute to malice that which can be attributed to incompetence.
Oh, Mr. Conspiracy guy is trying to tell me to go the nice way.
However,
in this case, okay.
Listen, gang rings. This is similar to this than what you're seeing, right? Because it's kind of the opposite, and to me, there's also like cathode anode type of thing going on. I think because they behave differently, right?
Well, yeah, there's a difference, obviously, because the ions would be traveling in a different direction, and they would have a.
But it's just as far as spatial, like you can kind of see, they seem to be getting a bit tighter as far as the delta between each ring, right, as you go out, and you kind of see that here, right? Oh,
we see that in electrical etching of the ground too.
Yeah. But there's an opposite thing that I see.
And Garrett Hill has examples of that as well.
Yeah. But there's an opposite thing I see on the, if you switch the polarity. There's a pretty good example of it. Yeah.
But
so anyway,
you're
radiative versus centripetal.
If I was to be a betting man, I would say that the white glow around that surface is attracted there because there is a negative source there. So you're getting anode tufts along this thing. And then each ring, the white part would represent a positive ions, and the dark space would represent electrons. Notice how it's a little spirally there too. I'm not sure if that's because of the probe.
So
or
is
not.
it a type of double layering?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. Not very powerful, but usually all of this energy is held in one double layer, just near it would all, like that whole outer ring would contract all the way to the surface, and it would just be there, just like we would have, well, not all the way to the surface, but just like we have cloud layers and then we have an ionosphere. It would be like that. But if we somehow, amazingly enough, started just changing our voltage and current potentials of the planet Earth, all these layers could suddenly expand outwards, and the things that we consider, the sky would be very weird, but you would have you would see the glows like this from one side. Night would look amazing because you'd be seeing down the tail. I wouldn't even know what that would look like. I couldn't even envision. You'd see a plasmoid out there, I know that, to a glowing ball in the middle of space. But a little bit further away than the sun.
I mean, to see what they're up to and what they present.